Wonderful. It's unbelievable how much we have in common.
Very well. Yeah, although I'm not a big free.
Hello,
Food thing.
Garrett.
Well, you stay with it.
I'm about to speak my class. Yeah. Oh,
You know why? And then I just told me that.
well, I need to be in there at 10:30.
They have my husband went.
Yeah, you can do that.
Yeah.
You go there, you have to go through the channel. Go to the back of the temple, like, you go through the back, like, to the right of the ark. And then over to the back. Corner. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see everybody. Let me introduce, my Coach Stoller is here. My mom is here too, but they came in, for my daughter's, performance, which was last night and tonight. Of music, so it was really good. Scholar was there last night. He was, somebody who's not as biased as the actress is biased. He was outstanding. There was no question that she was the person who belonged in that role.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
How old is he?
314. Yeah, she loves in musical theater, singing, dancing. So, yeah, so she performed, so, they have a second performance tonight, so anybody's looking for something fun to do, come see Newsies at North Middle School tonight.
Wow.
All right, so let's begin with our blessing. Baruch atah.
Beth-El. Hey, no, now it's home.
Great, so. Okay, so we're gonna continue with the blessing of Asher Yatzar, which we started looking at last week. Is on page 32. So page 32, and just to refresh our memories of what we discussed, this blessing is a blessing of thanks to God for creating our bodies. It goes, it's part of a couplet, a couplet of blessings. This one and then the next one, which is 134, is the blessing for the soul. So body and soul go together. In our good morning, in our kind of spiritual framework. In the spiritual framework of our liturgy, body and soul go together, the physical and the non-physical. Tangible. Okay, but we're going to see as we get into the service a little bit more, that same parallelism is also reflected in another couplet of blessings, which will speak about God is creator of the physical world, and then God is creator of the metaphysical. Okay, so the physical and the metaphysical are the two dimensions of existence properties that are affirmed by our liturgy. So we read the English translation. What's that, Matthew? Page 32 in the book. And we read in our translation, I'll read it again. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be impossible to endure and stand before you. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wonders. Okay, and then we looked at a chapter by Maimonides in his book Mishneh Torah, where he talked about the importance of taking care of the body for an explicit purpose. And who recalls, what is the explicit purpose that Maimonides set out for taking care of the body? Lee?
God, if we're going to pray to God, going to do mitzvot, then we have to take us so that we can do that.
Exactly. That's the end, the reason for it, for care of the physical self is so that you can be able to serve God, serve your duty, purpose, perform these votes. Which contrasts with what we might say about, contemporary society, where we say like, care of your physical body, the end is so that you can look good, fit into your bathing suit. Different kind of, lens for looking at the physical body, and looking at the world. Today, I want to show you, in a few minutes, after we take some comments on the lid, I want to, invite your reflections on what you're seeing and learning. Then I want to share with you some texts that I think offer a good contrast in I guess spiritual worldview, in respect to the role of the body. Okay, and through the contrast, I think that will help us understand Judaism's attitude toward the body more clearly and more deeply. Okay. But before we look at those texts, tell me now, after last week's discussion and looking at the translations and the poetic traditions on the left side, what thoughts and or questions do you have?
Rabbi, I still have, it's a little off the wall, kind of, as you said. Wrongfully opening or closing your mouth, for example. To me, that's in your life, in daily life, why are you speaking? No. What do you, and so certain things you didn't even hear. So that's how I interpret it.
Okay, then very nice.
Everyone has WAIT. Why am I talking?
Oh, why am I talking? Yeah. Well, there's there is a teaching in Pirkei Avot, where this one of the sages says, like, in all my long life, I've never experienced, or I've learned something. I've learned that the best thing is silence. It's listening. Okay, so that's good. And as you're praying the liturgy, if it causes, thoughts to come to mind, like be careful about speaking and the importance of listening, that's fantastic. I want to focus here though on this liturgy as dealing with the physical aspect of our existence. So what you're hearing there, or what you're seeing now is great. It's a kind of an ethical teaching about behavior. I really want to drill into kind of the the role of the physical body, the physical dimension of our existence. Courtney.
Do you think that maybe they're accentuating that because to make it more tangible, whereas like we're talking about something spiritual, sort of, abstract, at times very, and then because that the body is relatable, obviously, and it's physical, that's present, where, I don't know, where it's not too mystical, figure.
Okay, so the body is the most tangible and concrete aspect of our existence. Right? I mean, it's the I think we talked last week. I referenced Neil Gilman, who's a theologian. We're going to look at him when we get further into the liturgy. He talks about that our body is an inextricable part of who we are. You can't, it's impossible to imagine yourself without your body, right? Your body is, is central to who you are, and without a body, you would not be sitting here at the table. You wouldn't be able to participate in the world. I mean, the body is critical, but what's something that's interesting that Gilman says is, he kind of, he gets into like a real kind of close analysis of how we use language, and, you know, and speaking about our body, he says, you know, he says, like, we might say, like, I have a body, but I have a body doesn't really capture our relationship to our body. I mean, that suggests that there's a self that's separate from your body. And then you just have a body, like I have a cup of coffee. That doesn't really capture it. At the same time, he said, like, so you might say, like, because your body is so central to you might say, I am my body, but that also doesn't work because we know that we're more than only our body. So the body is very much bound up, but that's why it's paired here with the liturgy and the soul. The body and the soul are intertwined. And we couldn't have ourself without both of those things. And we can't say that our self is independent of either of those. But neither of those things is the totality of the self either. So then, Courtney, in your comment you made, you kind of drew a distinction between spiritual and physical. And I think what our liturgy is teaching us here is that it's not such a sharp divide between spiritual and physical. They're very much bound up together. Okay, and so I want us to see that, and especially as we contrast something that we're going to look at Christianity. All right, Shelley, you had your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this past week, after going through class last week, and this past week praying every morning this prayer, it made me wonder. I mean, it seems like this prayer for the body is pretty foundational for attitudes of Jews. In many ways, one really important way, I think, is that it celebrates the body. It doesn't say that it's bad, you know, and that we should ignore it or we should, you know, try to tame it or whatever. It celebrates the body. I think that maybe it would influence further reflections by Jews that are completely opposite of, say, the Catholic Church on abortion, or even when we do the Hametim versus Hakol, in terms of the resurrection of the body, and that prayer where, you know, the Reformed Jews took that out. But look, I know you say Hametim. All of those things, I'm wondering, it seems to me that that this particular prayer is kind of a foundation for that and for our attitudes.
Yeah, definitely, very much so. I think you're right. I'm sorry, I'm just looking for a document that I emailed to myself that did not even come through. I'll find it again. Okay, so I saw some hands. We'll start with Howard. Go ahead, Howard.
Going back to this, the point about Maimonides, and that caring for our bodies so that we can devote ourselves to God.
Yeah.
The role of the body in prayer is, I think, been a source of some contentiousness in Reformed Judaism. In I think more classical Reform, the body movements, that are associated with different parts of, different portions of our liturgy, were probably discouraged or not done at all. I mean, in our congregation, to this day, when we're gonna stand up and turn around and stop the pride or not.
Yeah,
Are we gonna stand on our tiptoes for a adult or we not? We're gonna cover our eyes with the skin of our fingers when we say the Shema. Those raised, I think, in classical Reform Judaism are very uncomfortable doing these things with our body
yeah.
that more traditional Jews take for granted.
So why do you think that is?
Well, I think it goes back to this whole notion of, of being like the Goyim, assimilating and fitting in and not being weird and different than the rest of the people in America.
Okay, so just kind of it's about demeanor and kind of like proper behavior or something in the particular setting. Yeah, but you're right. I think Howard, one consequence of that, that we do find, especially in the classical Reform setting of, it's really like you just sit very still and don't, you're right, is that we just kind of take the physicality out of play, in prayer. And you kind of don't, when you do that, because you're so, I just feel like you lose an important aspect of the feeling, of existence. Because what we're learning here, what I've been saying is that, that body is inextricably bound up with soul and who you are. I mean, you can't have one without the other. So to like kind of suppress the physical dimension out of a certain sense of decorum or propriety, I mean, just closes off that aspect of the experience. Whereas if you're in prayer and you open not only your heart and your mind, but also your physical self to the experience, and be much more powerful. Okay, so let's go around. Martha had a comment.
Yeah, from the metaphysical point of view, actually the body houses the soul, is a temple. And so we have to take care of the temple that houses our soul. And also Kabbalistically, we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And it goes back, if you look into Genesis, you can see that aspect of it. When I'm not going to go there, but Kabbalistically, that's what it is, that we have the body houses our temple.
Yeah,
It's a temple.
yeah, good. Yeah, very nice. We're gonna talk a little bit about that more. Thank you, Martha. Karen S., go ahead.
Thank you, Rabbi. This resonates very, very deeply with me. And I think Shelley really honed in on it. And Eileen this morning in talking about the attitude of gratitude that you drew breath this morning. This is a gift. You are blessed with another unknown amount of time. Help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, the attitude of gratitude that comes with just recognizing, life is very fragile, and that the concept of the soul being returned through drawing breath is it's LDO, as they say, like, obviously, the body is the vehicle, the temple, in which, if you believe in any kind of spiritual energy, etc., and that every morning you wake up, that the consciousness, this was very tenuous during, the nighttime. Thank you that I drew breath, and that my attitude is, now how can I be of value?
Good. Okay, very nice. The body, the fragility of the physical body is reflected.
It's the first rule of life. You got to show up. And if you don't breathe, you ain't going to show up.
Very good. Yeah, okay, so we have a couple more comments. First of all, I want to say, my mom is now here. Jean Stoller from Houston. All right, Vicky, go ahead, Vicky.
I don't know, if one looks at it from a more religious, aspect, going more towards the.
Vicky, can you speak more loudly, please?
Going more towards the traditional or conservative, orthodox, whatever, I think the body is a gift, I say, we think of it more. As vehicle to which to serve God. I'm not really quite sure. That the soul is inextricably, part of the body. And, you know, if you make the argument, well, if you didn't have a body, you wouldn't be here. You know what I mean? Well.
Yeah.
Yeah, spiritually.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, spiritually, that's, and. I just think that where is, because it is, we're getting into, you know, the metaphysical. Where is the soul located? I mean.
Yeah, we'll get to that when we get to the position. Yeah. Yeah.
Actually, we don't know, it's just a sense, a belief that we have. I think it's more of a human construct.
Maybe, we'll look at that, but when we get to the liturgy on the soul, which is the next one, but so I just, one thing I wanted to just slightly correct Vicky is, I didn't say that the soul is inextricably part of the body. It's not, it's the body and the soul are inextricably linked together,
Yeah.
and they comprise the self, the existence of the self, and that like without one or the other, you don't have a self. So that's why I said when Gilman said he does the thought experiment about language, and he says to say, I have a body, or for that matter, I have a soul, it doesn't really capture what it is, because there is no I without the body or without the soul. To say there is no I that has anything without them. So that I saying I have a body or I have a soul separates the self from the body. And I think what we're learning here, and the point of this liturgy, and what Gilman highlights, is that the two blessings of 32 and 34 are they work together, they're complementary. One does not supersede the other. Their body and soul are equally intertwined in comprising the self.
Make the same case for something still with the brain. Was
Well, the mind. Yeah, well, the brain, the functions, the neurons and all that, that's part of the physical body. And then there's physicality, and then there's mind. Mind is something different. When we talk about soul, we'll look at that. Okay, Susan, yeah, go ahead, Susan.
On page 33, the last two lines bother me, where it says, blessed are you, Adonai, source of our health and strength. What if you don't have the health and strength? What are you blessing? I'm very confused about those two lines.
Well, I mean, if you have any, if you are awake and alive, you have some element of health.
Some.
I mean, not full, but I mean, but who really, is ever like at 100% completely, perfect? I mean, nobody is. But so it's a matter of degree, but God is the source of our existence. So that's what it is.
Blessed, I don't know, or whatever I have.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
All right.
That's right. Okay, last comment, Courtney, and we're gonna move on.
So much of our language, so much of our existence is part of our, like, our body is also expressive. It's an unspoken language. And that can be through gesticulations, we raise our hands, it's we're speaking through our actions, if you're bodily, whatever we do. And I think that, you know, to not have the body is sort of like, you get lost in translation as well. Where in this pandemic, you know, doing by Zoom, we're not getting that energy, we're not picking up subconsciously even different body languages, different social cues.
Yeah,
And that transcends religion, it's part of the human condition, is to pick up on that, because it's also a defense mechanism.
yeah, good, that's true. There's a physical, I mean, the physical, it can't be discounted. And we know that from our experience, you know, over the last few years. With Zoom, like Zoom is really amazing, you bring people together in very incredible ways. And at the same time, we also know that there's just, there is still something that's different about being physically present. Right, okay, I want to make sure I didn't see any hands on this side of the table, but oh, you, okay, so Stu and Michael and Mel, then we do need to move on, those last three.
You know, this kind of reminded me of the early days of the space program, where there were a lot of mishaps and failures. And what people kept saying is that these rockets are very, very complicated. So the chance of something going wrong is certainly a good probability. Well, if you feel that way about the space program, I think that the human body is much, much more complicated. And I think that's kind of what they're saying here is, you know, form the human body with skill. It's just some amazed that we're able to do all the things we could do and remember all the things we remember. But the human body is just an amazing, complicated, magnificent item.
Right, that's right.
Pretty well.
Yes, and so a core element of this liturgy and the fact that it's here, you know, is it is saying that the human body is a design of God. And it's a skillful design, and it's like it's a majestic, wonderful, you know, functioning creation. That like every little thing, you know, in the body has to work together, and so we probably, if there's any disruption in it, minor disruptions, you know, cause us, you know, we feel ill, but if there were any kind of significant disruption, you just couldn't even exist, right? And that offers a particular view of our existence that's different from, say, looking at the world through the frame of evolution. Right? Now, evolution, you know, the science of evolution says that our bodies, you know, evolved over the course of time, you know, and to reach the point of where they are. But there's no design behind it. There's no intention behind it. And there's this great book, I'm going to bring it in, it will be looking soul. I've referenced it before, it's called Sapiens by Yuval Harari. It's a phenomenal book, so good. We'll read some stuff from it. But he talks about, you know, he says that in theory of evolution, that there is only one purpose to evolution, and that is survival of the species. That's it. Okay, so that the human body evolves over the course of time so as to survive.
Defense mechanism, like what I said.
Yeah, but everything, but in evolution, the kind of theory of existence is that our bodies are the way they are because they enable us to survive. That's the only purpose of evolution. There's no meaning behind it or intention behind it other than that. Whereas here, this liturgy is saying there is intention and meaning behind it, that it's divine design. You know, that the body is how it is because God made it so that we can serve a purpose in the world, which is what my motto is. This is not to discount evolution or, you know, suggest that evolution is wrong or anything. It's just that this is an example of how religion and science can work together. you know, if you're willing to embrace it that, you could say like, you know, we evolve, you know, evolution is how we evolve, it is how we got here. And yet evolution isn't the whole story. That there is purpose for our being other than just survival. Like pure evolution, we're only here just because our only goal is survival. Perpetuation of the species. But this says, no, we evolve here, but there's some bigger meta reason why we evolve beyond just perpetuation. Okay, that we're designed for a purpose, serving God. Okay, that's the Jewish way. All right, hold on. And Michael, and then everyone asks everybody else to hold your hand until we move on to the next.
Oh, just a comment on that, the body isn't perfectly designed, there with the classics, which we don't need, and come down and go. There's the appendix, which serves no purpose, except to make us sick, and it would be much more efficient if we breathe through one orifice and ate through another, so we couldn't choke to death. So we're not perfectly designed, but if the soul is connected to the body, then are you saying that each time a person is born, a new soul is born?
Yes. Yeah, that's, I mean, so when we get to soul, we'll talk more about what soul is in Jewish thought. Yeah, but body and soul. So when we look at Harari, I'm gonna bring him in because he's got a great kind of discussion about soul and kind of what Susan, hold on, ask you ways. Okay, and what Vicky said, you know, about the question of the soul. Is soul a human construct? Okay, because evolutionary science has no room for soul. There's no such thing. In evolutionary science. We are bodies, you know, with neurons and whatever, and the sole purpose of the whole process is to perpetuate the species, and that's it. But we, you know, not only Judaism, all religions and even non-religions, and they speak about something that is not kind of have this sense that a human being is more than just a physical body. And that's what we call soul is the word we get to it. Well, we're gonna get to that later, but just for the point now, just recognize that evolutionary science on its own has no room for meaning or purpose. There is no meaning or purpose in existence in evolution. Susan, wait, no. I'm gonna ask you to please raise. All right, hold on, Mel had a comment, and then we're gonna move on, and we can take more comments later. Go ahead, Mel.
Thank you, Rabbi. So I'm gonna add on to what Susan was saying and Karen and Stu. So Rabbi, what happens when your body fails? You know, it seems to me, you're saying you need God. When your body, it failed because of natural causes, you did it to yourself. And you can't go before God. They need another paragraph here. In my opinion, I'm digging here, right? What do you everybody knows body is eventually gonna fail.
Yeah.
What do? I can't say this prayer.
You can say it.
But then,
Or as long as you are alive, you are in bodily existence, and that is according to this liturgy is because of the design and grace of God.
because it's impossible to stand before you.
If your body failed and died, you could not stand before God.
But if you get your body's failed, you're sick.
No,
Doesn't mean that?
no. Guys, you need to move away from this idea that like, if you're not in perfect health, this prayer doesn't apply to you. The prayer does apply, as long as you exist in bodily form. In this world. You do so as a creation and by the grace of God. And the functioning of your body, whether it's functioning well, it's a matter of degree only. If you are here, you are in bodily form with the grace of God. Okay, all right. So let's let's move now. I had, for some reason, these documents that I emailed to myself so I could show online. Just seem to keep getting lost in viruses, they're not coming through. So I'm just gonna have to read them and ask you to put on your listening, caps. So, okay, so what I'm gonna share with you is excerpts from 2 contemporary books. That kind of talk about the role of the body in modern society, and comparing that with the perceptions of the body in Greek and Roman culture and in Christianity. Okay, because by just looking at this a little bit, it'll help us, I think, understand our Jewish views a little bit differently, or a little bit more deeply, because it is different from those other outlooks. No hands right now, I'm just gonna read. Okay, so the first book I'm gonna read from is called Full Circle. It's a really interesting book, I'm reading it right now. And the thesis of the book is, the subtitle of the book, which tells you the thesis is how the classical world came back to us. Okay, so the argument that the author is making is that modern society has essentially returned to the worldview philosophies of the Greek and Roman world. Yeah, like there, and in terms of this history, it was kind of presenting it as a bit of circular, because full circle, that there was the Hellenic, the Greek Roman period was supplanted by Christianity and Judaism, but then really Christianity is the bigger, much bigger, more larger in terms of its influence on the world. And that we've now kind of passed out of the era of Christianity and back into the era of the Greeks and the Romans. Okay, one example of this and his argument is in respect to views of the body. Okay, so he starts out this chapter from which I'm going to read in talking about the Greek and Roman attitudes toward the body. The body played a front and center role in Greek and Roman culture, where physicality was revered. It was the Greeks that invented the gymnasium, and physical exercise was something that was very much a part of Greek and Roman culture. Gladiators, all of the kinds of things. The reverence of the body was key in Greek culture. What he says here, and these are just excerpts. But then he says that the Greek and Roman reverence for the body was rejected by Christianity. Okay, so our attitudes towards the body change. He said, for Christians, the cult of the body, both as an object of pleasure to be caressed and pampered, and as a source of pride to be toned and exercised to a pitch of muscular perfection, which is the Greek attitude, represented an ongoing sin against the spirit. The weakness of the flesh was never more manifest than when the flesh was flexed and oiled and powdered in an ecstasy of self-love. In The Body and Society, his great study of sexual renunciation in early Christianity, Peter Brown places full weight on the tradition of continence and sobriety, which those early Christians inherited from the late classical world. But his principal aim is to show how wholly different, both in kind and degree, the Christian attitude to sex was to be. How sharp and dangerous and novel were the teachings of St. Paul. And he quotes Paul. For I know that nothing good dwells in, that is, in my flesh. I see in my members another law at war with the law in my mind. Wretched man that I am, who will deliver me from this body of death? That's a quote from Paul in his letters. From the sinful nature of sexual activity, except when properly controlled and sanctioned, Paul deduced the irredeemable sinfulness of the body as a whole. The sexual part, so to speak, represented the whole. A corporeal synecdoche, when that means just like when one aspect like represents the whole thing, which overwhelmed the church for nearly 2 millennia. Okay, so what he's saying here is that that Christianity introduced this idea that the body was not something to be revered, but actually that the body was a source of sin. Okay, that's a major departure from Greek Roman culture, which revered and elevated the body. Okay, so you heard it in Paul's quotation. So that it's from that idea that we get this, you know, later concepts that the body is a prison of the soul. Okay, and that the goal of the aspiration of existence is ultimately to transcend the body, to become free from the body, and to be, you know, able to realize the fullness of who we are, which is the soul. Okay, so in that way, body and soul are at war with each other in the Christian thought of St. Paul. Okay, so then you get practices like asceticism. Asceticism, the fancy word which means self-denying. Like when you deny the body, the bodily desires and so forth, as a way of taming it and transcending it. You know, so in certain kind of Christian practices, you know, monks and others will engage in physical denial, even like you know, in the Catholic Church, you know, priests are prohibited from having sex and being married. It's about denial of the physical body so that the soul can transcend it, because the body is a prison of the soul. Now, Judaism does not see it that way. In this liturgy, as you see, that we've been studying, that this doesn't in any way look at the body as something to be overcome or something to be feeling you know, negative about, like Paul, you know, like how terrible and how wicked is my flesh. There's nothing good in it. This, as somebody put it, this liturgy celebrates the body. Okay, but it does so different than how Greek and Roman culture do. Okay, so now I want to keep reading from that book, Full Circle, where he brings in, he ties us, remember his thesis is that in modern society, we return to Greek and Roman philosophies of the body. And now he's pointing out, and I think this will resonate with a lot of you, we certainly will recognize it, what he says is a modern cult of the body. Okay, like it was in Greek and Roman times. He says, this is, after all, the new divine service, the proper faith for those who are serious about being modern. And it is an explosive phenomenon of the last 20 years. This book was written within the last 10 years. According to the Fitness Industry Association, already there is an association, there now are more than 5,700 public and private gyms in the UK. This author's Britain. The chairman of the Fitness Association and chief executive of LA Fitness says that in the 1990s, every time we opened a club, it was full 6 months later. This market research company reckons all those gyms between them pulling 2.3 billion pounds a year. Not a penny of this vast sum comes from me, the author, because the whatever organization in the UK regards my state of fitness in my old age as such a top priority that my health card allows me to use all these beautiful, expensive machines free forever. At present, around 12% of the adult population uses a gym of some sort. Both the private gym operators and the Department of Health think of this as only 12% and are scratching their heads as to how to entice, badger the remaining 88% of us to join into joining up. No old style evangelists were ever more insistent and importunate. Insurance companies are offering 75% discounts to customers who join a gym and work out twice a week. No brave new world could be keener to monitor our personal physical regimes. Even the government has been suggesting that the NHS should think twice about treating patients who refuse to lose weight or give up smoking. This might then seem to be a joyful time for the missionaries of the body beautiful. Not a bit. As with missionaries of the soul, any growth in one's congregation is also a cause for anxiety, especially when it is this rapid. For the flesh is as weak as ever. The specter of backsliding looms. Across the industry, between 50% and 60% of gym goers slip silently off the register each year. If you want a suitable emblem from classical mythology to represent the average member of a gym club, I would suggest the figure of Sisyphus in hell, rolling his stone uphill and watching it fall back down again to the end of time. It is not surprising that the better off seekers after fitness should lighten the burden of their solitude by employing a personal trainer. This is a profession even more shiny new than the gym itself. And to those celebrities and wannabes who can afford their services, even more irresistible. How better can you hope to obliterate the pain of every creaking muscle than by listening to their words of encouragement and advice? The mere presence of this godlike figure matching your every stride makes you feel better. Some of his or her own glowing, vibrant physical tone must surely rub off on you. With a personal trainer at your side, failure is not an option. Thus, our age has reinvented the father confessor, that indispensable figure who allayed the angst, dispelled the boredom of high-born ladies. All right, let's take reactions. All right, so Susan, you've been patiently waiting. Go ahead.
Actually, I just wanted to say something that combines evolution and God. Several years ago, the New York Times had a magazine where they interviewed many physicists who just were very major scientists. And it was called The Infinite Regress, and how each physicist combined their science, what they did in science, to God. And it was a fascinating magazine. All right, my reaction to this is that there has to be a combination of both. When you look at the Greek statues, everything is perfect. A certain amount of inches between each eye, the nose is perfect. And sometimes with plastic surgery, we're heading toward that now, so there has to be not the Christian, where you deny everything, but some middle ground we have to come into.
Yeah, right, and I think, I think, and I want to suggest here that Judaism offers the middle ground. Okay, but I want to draw that out by reading a little more, but yes. But I think, your idea, your reference to plastic surgery fits exactly what the author, Ferdinand Mounts. It fits exactly what he's saying, that we have this return to Greek, Roman, ethics of the body, where it's like the body is so extolled that we're like sculpting our bodies in the way that the Greeks sculpted the statues.
Right.
Because the ideal cut, body is like the pinnacle of existence. Now, that's not what our liturgy is saying. Our liturgy here is celebrating the body as a gift, of God's wondrous, majestic kind of design. But like my mind has taught us, and this says, so that we can stand before you. And serve the purposes of God, because that's our spiritual calling. But whereas in Greek culture and Mount argues in modern culture, the body is an end to itself. Okay, let's go around, Courtney, and then Howard.
Just a comment about that, and keeping with the comment about plastic surgery. There's a wonderful short story by Beth-El, I think it's called Mole, and basically it's a man who really couldn't stand the way his wife, she had a mole on her face, and when she went to surgery, she got to die from, or she was disfigured, I forgot. So I think it's interesting because in my classes, studying English, we examine, like, what is it to be? What is it to be, over the physicality, the way we look like in keeping with gyms, and I think it's interesting too, last thing is that, the renewal. So every January 1st is a special on gyms. It's like we're getting an influx of people, the influx of members, and it's renewal. And then people, they're hoping that you will renew for the following months. So I just think that, I think we just have to design our vessel as best we can, give semblance of control and as what we present to the world. When it's, again, it's like an unspoken language.
Okay, thanks, Courtney. Howard.
Yeah, three quick comments. One, I didn't know that you were gonna say this, Lindsay, but Courtney, but there's a reason why Planet Fitness sponsors this celebration on New Year's Eve at 32nd Street. And their business model specifically is designed to get people to sign up and then not go. I mean, that's Ron Epstein knows somebody who was there at the beginning of Planet Fitness. And that's
Like if everyone went, it would be like a run on the gym. It would be- Yeah.
so just keep collecting their money.
Right.
No better time to collect that money than on New Year's resolution.
Right.
Second comment, I think the author is a little unfair in that, we know so much more now about the things that we need to put in or not put into our bodies and do and not do to our bodies in order to remain healthy and live longer. We are constantly learning about that. And to the extent that we act on that, and we walk so many minutes or so many miles a day, or we don't eat this, or we do eat that. And then insurance companies give discounts or provide free gym memberships. I mean, there's a reason, and it benefits society when all of us are not paying the medical bills of people who didn't take care of themselves, we all benefit.
Yeah.
Third point, I was thinking about the section of the Hafta that we typically don't read about tzitzit.
Yeah.
And that the purpose of the bush fringe is so that when we gaze upon it, we do not follow our lustful urge. And I think that goes to the middle ground of Judaism. And there's a recognition that our bodies and things that our bodies cause us, our minds, the connection between the mind and the body to do can lead us astray, but it's reality, and we have to find a way to combat it so as to use our bodies in a way that God intended.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the body is an integral part of our being. So rather than the Christian ethos, is like to suppress the body to the best of your ability and try to transcend it, Judaism is, as Howard beautifully points out, is calling us to embrace the body and use it well for our best purposes. But the best purposes, this is the it may now, maybe extra sarcastic or whatever about it. But I think he's trying to make the point that we've gotten to this place now where in our culture, we're revering the body for its needs. And actually, the science of what we know, I mean, you're right. We know more about how the body works now than they did in the Middle Ages and maybe more than it did in the Roman period and everything. A couple things about that. One is that I think it's in Mal's book at the beginning, he cautions the reader about this trap that he says people of every age fall into, which is thinking that in our time, we know everything. Okay, like that we're the pinnacle, it's like, and we'll say like, well, they didn't know what we know and everything, and okay, that's true. However, it would be a delusion to think that what we know is A, all there is to know, and B, that it's right. I mean, how often do things get disproven? Things that we thought we knew turn out to be wrong. So he cautions that kind of humility. And the second thing is, and this is something when we get into the a little bit later in the liturgy, I mentioned last week a couple of books that I read recently talking about the religious atheists, who wrote these books. Themselves, they claim this term religious atheist because they don't believe in God, but they recognize when they're trying to kind of articulate a philosophy for themselves. And for others who don't believe in God, they recognize that when science is like the dominant frame through which we experience the world, it leads to a flattening of the experience and leads to it creates a void of meaning. Like I was saying before, with evolutionary science, there is no meaning to our existence in evolution. So the more we rely on science as like the main way that we see everything, the more we inadvertently lean into meaninglessness. Okay, and this author is telling us that we fill the void of meaninglessness by turning the body into a god. Okay, and that's something really to think about. And I want to, on the heels of that, I want to read to you from a second book, which is also really good. I highly recommend it. It's called Strange Rites. And it's about this author, it was written just a few years ago. This author makes the kind of case that there are, although like affiliation with traditional religion in our society is on the decline, as we will know. That does not mean that the quest for spirituality is on the decline. In fact, it's not. The surveys that show like affiliation with traditional religion, people describe themselves as not religious, that's increasing. The people say they're not religious, but the same surveys also show that people are searching for spirituality and they're searching for meaning, just as they always have been, and they're finding it in other things that are non-traditional, even things that we think of as secular, like wellness culture and social justice and fandom and all these kinds of things that she describes as religions because they have the features of religion. So this, you're going to read from her chapter on wellness, which she describes as a contemporary form of religion. All right, so she says, at its core, wellness isn't simply a marketing scheme or even a self-help mantra. It's a cohesive philosophy of life, one rooted in both ethical notions about the self and metaphysical notions about energy. It's a theology, fundamentally, of division. The authentic intuitional self, both body and soul, and the artificial malevolent forces of society, rules, and expectations. We are born good, we are tricked by big pharma, by processed food, by civilization itself, into living something that falls short of our best life. Our sins, if they exist at all, lie in insufficient self-attention or self-care. False modesty, undeserved humilities, refusing to shine bright. We have not merely the inalienable right, but the moral responsibility to take care of ourselves first before directing any attention to others. This is actually describing the theology of wellness. We have to listen to ourselves to behave authentically in tune with what our intuition dictates. Others, after all, are potential enemies. The people in our lives and the demands they make upon us might well be sources of, quote, toxic energy if we're not careful to avoid them. The food we eat is full of toxins too. Within this model, self-care in the form of fitness classes, intense meditation apps, mindfulness courses, or 10-step skincare routines becomes at once a form of self-love and self-discipline. We are not challenged to love our neighbor as ourselves or to overcome materialistic urges. Instead, our challenges come in the form of intense and often expensive rituals. That morning soul cycle class, an evening 30-minute beauty routine that reaffirm our commitment to perfecting ourselves. If our bodies were once temples, to use a popular diet mantra, now they're miniature gods. Our ontological purpose as human beings is to live our best life, to shake off the demands of society and the meat industry, and, well, other people. And she goes on. Contemporary wellness culture implicitly collapses the distinction between the divine self and its purely corporeal counterpart. The energy you tap into in a yoga class and the energy you get from drinking a moon juice concoction and the energy you get from positive thinking are at once unifying spiritual constructs. The world is an inherently meaningful place with energy running through it, and gauges of your personal material contentedness. The world revolves around you. The existence of a higher power and the dewiness of your skin, or balance of your bank account, or circumference of your waist, are inextricably intertwined. It's the best of both worlds. It combines moral relativism with a comforting veneer of metaphysical universalism. An inherently meaningful world where you can still ethically do whatever you want. Wellness begins and ends with the self. All right, thoughts on that? Michael.
I think it's an exaggeration. You know, he's taking, you have a very small minority of people who think that way, and you have a lot of advertising about people who have the perfect bodies that they'll make you perfect. But I think most people fall back from that. And they walk a half hour a day. Or they watch what they eat. That's not worshiping yourself. Most people don't go to the extremes that she's talking about.
Hey, most people don't?
Most people don't.
So look, you have to look at the financial figures that she presents for the wellness company. And just, you know, and so she talked about Soul Cycle, she talked about Goop, which is Gwyneth Paltrow's company. She talks about, you know, the gym, like all of it, she makes a case, and that's just a little excerpt after, but makes a case of like, you see where the dollars are going in society, that like the flow of money into like the, you know, into the personal wellness is really blowing your mind.
Well, before this, you had a lot of, you had health culture, which Kellogg, you know, founded the cereal company, basically founded it as a health food.
Yeah.
So this is.
Oh,
here, I just think, it's a gross exaggeration.
Well, and not only has it been with us for years, but the author of Full Circle says it started with the Romans. And we're coming back to it.
Well,
But-
that was a minority of people too, because it was only the wealthy
That's it.
that was focused on this.
And then we're allowed.
And we're allowed.
Because they were strong. Yeah, so because in Roman society, there were citizens. And then who did these things, and then there were the other people were slaves, so forth and not permitted. Yeah, really, these books talk about those social constructs too, fine,
I think maybe that's the point that it goes back to Roman. I
yeah,
don't think the highlight of this whole thing, I think this is a very, very judgmental piece. Okay, not everybody is going out there to extremes. And a lot of people such as myself, I mean, it's very important to me every day to get to some kind of fresh air activity.
yeah,
Not just for my body, because I'm very thin, for my mind, for my head, for all the stuff I'm dealing with in my life, just to like have time for myself.
definitely, we saw that in my mind. Remember, we read him last time, he talked about, certain foods to eat and then not eat, he said, do 30 minutes, of producing activities. Yeah,
Be watching what they eat,
yeah.
I'm not watching.
Yeah, but just as a thought here, and look, to the extent that it makes you uncomfortable, I will invite you to reflect on it.
Right.
Afterward, and see to what extent is the body becoming into itself for you. Okay, because my mind is, he didn't say. He didn't say neglect your body, that's not it, and this liturgy is celebrating the body. Okay, but there's a difference in terms of the philosophy that underpins it. Maimonides said, to eat certain things, to not eat certain things, exercise 30 minutes a day, to get the proper amount of sleep, all of these kinds of things, so that you can serve God and fulfill your divine purpose in the world. But all of this, what she points out in the book, and what Mounts in his book point out, with the with the moon juice and all these kinds of things, and the beauty routines and all the money where we put our money.
Fast.
It's not that it's wrong with taking care of your body, it's transforming the body into an end unto itself.
Right.
Which is worship of the body, and that's Greek and Roman. Okay, that's the point.
Right.
Okay, Vicky. Yeah.
It's also idolatry.
It's yes.
I see, for the cohort, we understand, we're talking about a group, just like, any other extreme group. So we're talking about a group. I don't know the statistics, that, so it could be more than, the small percentage, but to me, it's all substitution. They've taken away the higher power, whomever, whatever religion it's not Christianity, it's not Judaism. They took away the higher power and they replaced it with self and the worship of self. And I also
That's
think
right.
the substitution instead of, I never pronounce it right,
Allah.
yeah. Have all these rules and regulations about what will.
Yes.
That's
right.
how I see it, one big substitution.
Oh, that's right. No, the book is a fascinating read, and the wellness culture is only one chapter. There are other things, but her thesis is exactly that it's an idolatry of the self. Ultimately, she says at the end of the chapter that the wellness culture, in her view, is rooted in fear. It's rooted in fear of death. Okay, it's rooted in fear of death, and she said ultimately it's an expression of nihilism. Okay, nihilism meaning that there's no meaning, right? That there's no meaning, and that's what I was saying before about the, with evolutionary science says that there is no meaning to human existence other than perpetuation of the species. And the more we lean into that and shed, you know, a religious framework also, and just make science the religion, it strips the world of meaning. There is no meaning. You're just here to perpetuate it, that's it. Right? So we substitute, but the human being has a desire, need for meaning. So we look for it in other places and make the body into a god, or make other things into God. Her book, I mean, you should read the stuff about, she has a great chapter about Harry Potter. Okay, because she talks about how fandom, because fandom is also a substitute religion in American society, and it's great. I mean, the stuff that she talks about, you really see, I mean, how like there are people in the world that make fandom their religion. They find meaning in you know, meaning in their life in Harry Potter. And you can actually even see, I can't remember if she wrote the book. It may have come out before you know, the controversy surrounding J.K. Rowling. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. There's a really interesting podcast, by the way. I just finished listening to it, and well, I didn't finish, it's still ongoing, but I'm up to date on it. It's called The Witch Trials of J.K. Rowling. It's really fascinating, but it touches on this fandom thing because so J.K. Rowling said some controversial things about transgender and whatnot, and the fandom, like Harry Potter fandom, like revolted against J.K. Rowling and basically like disowned her, like excommunicated her from Harry Potter. She wrote Harry Potter. But she has thus been accused, and the podcast sometimes like the fandom, which has become like a religious community, has accused J.K. Rowling of heresies against Harry Potter world, which she created. But it's taken on it's bigger than her. There are tickets, there are orthodoxies, there are so forth that go along with the religion, as Tara Burton, the author of the book, puts it, that J.K. Rowling herself, the founder of the religion, has been now seen to violate her own religious creed and has been excommunicated. Fascinating stuff. So anyway, we need to stop here. We'll I invite you to reflect on these things, and we'll continue next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.